Alright folks, so this is the brand new Apple Watch Ultra 2, and this is the original Apple Watch Ultra. So what's different? So with the new Apple Watch Ultra 2, it has everything that came with the original Ultra, including that brand new design with a super rugged titanium case. It has a sapphire lens for increased scratch resistance. It has their action button, which you can customize to perform quick actions like starting a workout. It has a larger and more textured dial and side button, which have more protection around the outside. It also has their siren feature, so you can set on audible alert, and also has longer battery life than what you can get on their series line of watches. So what exactly makes the Ultra 2 different than the original Ultra? Well, it's basically all on the inside. So in this video, we're going to go over everything new with the new Apple Watch Ultra 2, including all the new hardware, but also how that new hardware actually translates into everyday use and if it actually makes a difference. But just like all my reviews, I'll also be going into tons of detail into sports and fitness performance, where I'll have plenty of examples for you for how it performs through sports like running, cycling, as well as weight training. And that's going to be for stuff like heart rate accuracy, GPS accuracy, as well as battery life. But maybe most importantly, I'll also talk about if the Ultra is worth the upgrade if you already own an original Ultra. So for what's new, the first big thing is that the new Ultra 2 comes with Apple's new S9 SiP, and basically this is a faster processor than the previous generation, where this has 60% more transistors, a 30% faster GPU, as well as a neural engine that's 2 times faster. Now, I really have never had any complaints about the speed of an Apple Watch. Like, there's never been a moment where I'm like, that's just too darn slow, where I thought the interface was laggy or anything like that. But hey, the new Ultra 2 is faster. But all that new processing power isn't just about speed. So it also allows the Ultra 2 to get some new features that leverage that new S9 system in a package, like being able to process Siri requests on the watch itself without needing the cloud or your iPhone, new Siri Plus health features that allow you to request health information that's being collected on your watch, as well as a new double tap interface feature. So for the first feature there, processing Siri requests on the watch itself, the aim here is to deliver faster and more secure Siri requests without needing to be connected to the cloud or to your phone for those requests. And examples of this would be stuff like setting timers as well as alarms. So right here, I have my iPhone that's connected to this watch, but it's completely off. Set a timer for 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Counting down.
But you can't necessarily do stuff like, what's 4 plus 4?
To do that, you'll need to be online.
So I'll be curious how those on-device Siri requests can expand over time. And then very much related to that, there's also new Siri Plus health features where you can request health-related data that your watch collects, like what's my resting heart rate or how much sleep did I get last night. And that definitely extends the on-device Siri request, but that feature won't be available until later this year. But all that new processing power also allows for a new double tap feature, which is a newish way of interacting with your watch. And quick note before we get into the double tap features that I'm actually going to be demoing this for you on a Series 9 that Apple specifically sent out to demo this feature. They actually didn't enable on the Ultra 2 quite yet because it is just more of like an internal beta feature at the moment. And this feature, just like Siri Plus Health, won't be available when the Ultra 2 and the Series 9 are first available on September 22nd. It'll be coming a little bit later on down the road. Anyhow, getting back to that double tap feature, what this allows you to do is perform primary actions with a quick double tap of your thumb and another finger. And it doesn't need to be your index finger, I found. This works for me with any of my other digits. And in terms of what you can do with it, you can get to your Smart Stack from the watch face. Then you can scroll through your Smart Stack widgets. You can answer and hang up calls. You can start and stop timers, and you can start and pause music playback. And then you can also customize the experience here too. So with music playback, you can change the behavior to skip a track versus play and pause. And then with the Smart Stack, you can switch it to select an item instead. And if you're in a portion of the interface where the double tap gesture doesn't currently do anything, all it does is just have this little icon up top that kind of wiggles. And by the way, with workouts, the double tap gesture doesn't work there currently either, but I can see a scenario where you could accidentally double tap during some sort of activity. So I think that's understandable. But we definitely also have to talk about how this differs from the assistive touch features that already existed before this. So the new double tap feature specifically uses the new neural engine to process these requests, and they apparently wrote specific software just for this feature, which is supposed to be different than the assistive touch features because this is more of an added feature for everyone, as in an additional way of interacting alongside the other physical controls like the touchscreen, buttons, and the dial. The assistive touch features, on the other hand, are meant to navigate throughout the entire device with a much more comprehensive set set of gestures. And assistive touch runs on the main CPU, which is much more power hungry versus the neural engine. So the new double tap feature is apparently much more efficient when it comes to power consumption. Now, was I initially confused about the difference? Absolutely. But if we think of it more as an add-on feature to existing controls versus assistive touch, which is meant to be a completely different way of interacting for individuals who may not be able to use the other hand, it makes more sense to me. And I'd also be interested to know, for those of you out there who do use the assistive touch controls on a regular basis, what kind of battery life that you get. And then another new... Ooh, timer just went off. I said turn the timer off, along with a specific direction on where to look. Are you serious? How many timers did I set here? Okay, so let me start over. So another new hardware upgrade they have inside is a new 2nd gen ultra wideband chip, and this opens up a new precision find feature in conjunction with an iPhone 15, which shares the same kind of chip. So what you can do here is when you go to find your phone from your watch, it brings up a new interface which is similar to what you would do from your iPhone with something like an AirTag, where it gives you the distance to your iPhone along with specific direction and where to look. Now, for those of you who are curious, if you have an Ultra 2 and you're using it with an iPhone 14 or older, it's basically the same experience as before, where it plays an audible ping on your phone. The Ultra 2 comes with a titanium case just like the original Ultra, but this time around, the case is made out of 95% recycled titanium in the construction versus the virgin titanium case that was found before. And this is going along with their big environmental push this year. And there's zero difference here when it comes to the case, by the way. It's still super premium and it looks and feels exactly the same. Now, for one feature that you may actually notice from the outside is the display, where the new Ultra 2 comes with a display that can now achieve a maximum brightness of 3000 nits versus the already very bright 2000 nits on the original Ultra. And it's definitely noticeable, folks, especially outdoors. But again, to be perfectly honest with you, I never really had a complaint about the original Ultra in terms of brightness. I mean, it was already super bright, but hey, now it's even brighter. But that brighter display actually does also make a difference at night if you're using the flashlight mode, so that's definitely nice. But along with the display being able to get brighter, they were also able to achieve an overall lower brightness all the way down to 1 nit versus 2 nits on the original Ultra. And that's going to help a bunch during nighttime hours, especially with this kind of display technology where the blue light that these can emit can actually disrupt sleep cycles. And then for one more difference on the inside, the new Apple Watch Ultra 2 has 64 gigabytes of storage versus the original Apple Watch Ultra, which has 32 gigabytes. Another new feature they announced is the red night mode on some watch faces can now just be automatically enabled using the built-in ambient light sensor, but this isn't actually an exclusive feature for the Ultra 2. This also works with the original Ultra. And then going along with that, there's also a new Modular Ultra watch face, where this is a new watch face that leverages the large high-resolution display of the Ultra, where it now has complications on the side of the bezel that show either seconds, altitude, or depth, along with 8 other complications that you can have on the display. So tons of data available for you here. And it's also very, very customizable. But again, this isn't necessarily an Ultra 2 specific feature. This is also available on the original Ultra. And then on the outdoor side of things, they also added a new altitude alert feature. So what this does is that it allows you to set a specific altitude in the Compass app where it'll alert you when you go over a specific altitude. So think like if you're headed out on a high alpine adventure, you can set it to alert you once you get over something like 11,000 feet or something like that, so you can take some time to acclimatize. Now, going along with the ambient night mode feature as well as the modular Ultra watch face, there's also some new sports features that were added with WatchOS 10. And again, these aren't necessarily exclusive to the Ultra 2 or the Ultra for that matter. These are actually available on any Apple Watch that supports WatchOS 10, which basically goes all the way back to the Series 4. So the first big round of updates were for all us cyclists, with support for external speed and cadence sensors as well as cycling power meters. But not only that, there's also support for smart bike trainers and smart bikes. So with speed sensors, this allows you to record speed and distance while riding indoors. So all you have to do here is just go into your Bluetooth settings, look for health devices, and choose your speed sensor and just pair it up. And then you also may want to check your wheel dimensions to make sure that it matches your bike. You can also use speed sensors for riding outdoors for slightly more accurate distance, but satellite accuracy is getting good enough nowadays that most people don't necessarily need a speed sensor for riding outside. And then with cadence sensors, this allows you to monitor your cadence when you ride, making sure that you're staying in the optimal range for how fast you're spinning your pedals. The big one, though, is support for cycling power meters. So for a quick primer, cycling power meters allow you to measure the amount of force that you're applying to the pedals, and you can collect power from power meter pedals, cranks, and also most smart bike trainers also transmit that data. And the pairing process is exactly the same here, where all you do is just go into the Bluetooth settings to pair up your power meter. And what you get here when you do this is an additional workout view where you can see your current power as well as your power zone. And then at the end of the workout, you'll also have all this data that you can view in the fitness app. And then with most smart bike trainers and smart bikes, when you pair these up, you actually get all three metrics all in one. So you'll get power, speed, as well as cadence with just one pairing. And along with the ability to pair power meters is automatic FTP estimation. So FTP is your functional threshold power, which is basically how much power that you can theoretically maintain for an hour straight before exploding. And it's basically a great way of gauging your cycling fitness. As you get fitter, your FTP should also get higher. So it's a good way of knowing if you're headed in the right direction with your training. Typically, to get FTP, you'd have to go through a rather grueling FTP test, whether that's actually riding as hard as you can for an hour straight, or there's also shorter ramp style tests where the power gradually increases every minute until you pop. Either way, those hurt a lot. So what Apple's doing, which is actually similar to what some other companies are doing like Garmin and Trainer Road, are trying to automatically estimate your FTP with more just like normal riding, I guess you could say, so you don't have to do those brutal tests. Now, when I first tested out this feature when WatchOS 10 was in beta, the result was coming up quite a bit short of my actual FTP, which is around 280 watts. And then both Garmin and Trainer Road's automatic FTP detection also had me right around that 280 watts. Over time, though, it has increased using Apple's automatic calculation, but it's still lower than my actual FTP and some other platforms' estimates, so it's getting better for sure, but there's probably still a little bit of polish that needs to happen there. The reason this can be important, though, to know your actual FTP is that a lot of cycling training platforms need an estimated FTP to produce meaningful workouts for you. So you can think like if your FTP estimate is too low, that means your workout may be too easy and you could be doing more. But the nice thing is you can edit your FTP manually, which will then in turn adjust your power zones accordingly. And then another new feature that came out with WatchOS 10 for cyclists is a live activity view in conjunction with your iPhone when you're riding. So what this does is that it basically mirrors the information that's being collected on your Apple Watch so you can see it on your iPhone. So what you can do here is that you can mount your phone onto your handlebars, which is much easier to see your data right in front of you versus having to turn your wrist. Plus the information is a lot larger, of course. Again, this is a WatchOS 10 feature though, so it's not that you actually need an Ultra 2 to use this feature. The Ultra 2 also has their new WatchOS 10 offline topo map feature where in conjunction with your iPhone, you'll be able to view contour lines in the Maps app in addition to the shaded relief they already have, which helps provide more context when you're out adventuring. Now, for the offline part, this will require your iPhone where you'll download the maps to your phone and then the Ultra 2 will use the maps from your phone. And then your phone doesn't necessarily need to have cell service, but it doesn't download maps to the watch itself. And this is a big step forward for Apple Watches when it comes to activities like hiking, but I would love to see this all integrated within the workout app itself, where I wouldn't necessarily have to go out of the workout app, then to the Maps app to view those maps. I'd just love it to be all in one app if I started to work out. And for battery life, the Ultra 2 has the same 36-hour battery life claim as the original Ultra, and this is just more like a typical use battery life claim. Now, Apple's battery life claims do tend to be a bit conservative though, so for me, I'm getting closer to like 2 full days out of it, actually a bit more sometimes depending on how many outdoor activities I track. And then when it comes to these sports and fitness features of the Ultra 2, it's actually going to be pretty much identical to the original Ultra. So when it comes to accuracy for tracking outdoor activities, the Ultra 2 comes with a dual band or dual frequency satellite chipset. And with this kind of technology, its aim is to deliver better accuracy in more challenging environments where satellite signals can get kind of iffy, like around really tall buildings, steep canyon walls, as well as a lot of heavy tree cover, where satellite signals can actually kind of bounce off those objects. An important thing to note here though is that the Ultra and the Ultra 2 will always use its built-in satellite chipset for recording outdoor activities. So before the Ultra, so basically on the Series 7 and before, if you had your phone with you and in range of your Apple Watch when you're recording an outdoor activity, the Apple Watch would actually use the phone's GPS rather than the built-in GPS on the watch itself. But that's changed since the original Apple Watch Ultra, the Series 8, the Series 9, and the Ultra 2. These newer watches only will use the built-in GPS on the watch itself. And overall, this is actually a good thing because accuracy actually tends to be a bit better from the watch since it's on your wrist versus the phone, which may be in your pocket. Anyhow, in terms of accuracy, taking a look at this run here, all good stuff. It's a little bit shorter than the other devices I was using, but still very much in the same ballpark. If we take a look at the GPS tracks, again, all good, and there were no big misses or anything like that. If we take a look at some of the tighter corners and curves, there were a few that were a little bit smoother than the other devices, but still, overall, it's doing a very good job. And then moving on to a longer activity, like on this road ride, again, very similar results out of the Ultra 2. And I also wanted to point out that the Ultra 2 did a decent job at tracking elevation gain using its built-in altimeter. And if we take a look at the finer detail of the GPS tracks, again, the Ultra 2 is doing a very decent job. What you may notice though are on some of these tight corners, the track isn't quite as tight on the Ultra 2 as it is on some of the other devices that are using the same kind of technology. Nothing crazy, but not quite as crispy. Now, I should also mention that Apple Watches before, I believe the Series 6 or so, they had a notorious habit of cutting corners a lot, like quite drastically, and much more than that previous example. But Apple has seemed to change their algorithms over time to make them much more accurate than before. And then moving on to heart rate accuracy, the Ultra 2 uses the same exact heart rate sensor that was found on the original Ultra, so we really should see similar results out of it. So starting out with some indoor cycling, that's super solid out of the Ultra 2, and we can even see how it tracks some of these more rapid changes in heart rate very well. There was a spot right at the beginning where it took a couple minutes to get a solid lock onto heart rate, but after that, it's basically a mirror image of the external heart rate sensor I was wearing. And then when it comes to road biking, that's again a very good result here. Again, a little bit of a blip right at the beginning, but after that, it was super solid. There were a couple little spots like here and here in the tail of the ride where it wandered just for a moment, but all in all, this is a very good result for road biking. When it comes to running, there are a few minutes at the beginning of this run where it read pretty high. Now, this is something that I've just kind of noticed for my testing of Apple Watches over the years, is that for some reason or another, at the beginning of workouts, I've just seen some high readings. After a minute or two, it gets back in line. And that's very much what happened here, is that there were some high readings at the beginning of the run, but for the rest of the run, it was pretty solid. And then when it comes to weight training, that's really good stuff right there. So Apple Watches tend to do a very good job with weight training and high intensity interval training, and the Ultra 2 was no different. That's very good for this kind of activity. So the new Apple Watch Ultra 2 really is all about what's new on the inside. Now, are all those new things reasons to upgrade? Real talk, probably not for most people, but that's actually perfectly okay. So if we take a look at what Apple does with its products, they generally retain the same design year after year, and most changes are subtle, with a lot of changes happening inside. We see some design changes with some of their iPhones where, let's say, there's round corners versus flat edges or something like that, but we don't really see that with Apple Watches. Like their series line of watches, these have largely remained the same year after year. And that's the same with this year's Ultra 2, where you really can't tell the difference between the original Ultra and the Ultra 2. Maybe the brighter display as well as some of the new updated bands, but really all the other changes are all inside. And for what's new inside, that new S9 SIP does enable some new features like the new double tap feature as well as on-device Siri. It is a little bit of a short list for now, but to Apple's credit, they add a lot of features via software update over time, and I'm guessing that's going to expand. So while there may be some new features in the future that utilize that S9 SIP specifically, Apple has had a great history of coming out with software updates with new features that go back, like way back to Apple Watches of the past. And with that actually makes me think that Apple doesn't necessarily expect us to upgrade every single year. Now, I am in the same boat as a lot of you though. I would have loved to see some new colors and maybe some new size options, but we didn't get that this year. Instead, we got a lot of features that are enabled by the new internals. Now, one last thing I wanted to bring up is that I have never seen a complaint about how an Apple Watch is too slow or anything like that. These are plenty fast devices. And with the Ultra 2, we have a new brighter display along with a new processor, but it still has that same 36-hour battery life claim. So that leads me to believe that the new processor also is more efficient. My curiosity though is what happens if we dial back that display brightness and maybe turn off some of those new special features that some of us may or may not use. Does that have a huge impact on battery life, and can we get more like a 2+ days out of it consistently? That's what I'm going to be experimenting with quite a bit with the Ultra 2 in the next coming weeks, so make sure to subscribe to get a notification when those videos come out. Anyhow, those are just my thoughts on the Ultra 2, but I also want to hear from you, so definitely leave your thoughts down in the comments section down below. And if you found the information in this video useful, do me a favor and also hit that like button. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.